Good day, grade 9 learners. This is Teacher Lester, aka Sir Les, and I welcome you all to another fun and meaningful learning. If you are new to my channel, don't forget to subscribe and hit notification bell for you to be updated of new uploaded videos. For today's video, we will be talking about drugs. And this topic is actually discussed in the second quarter of your module. The title of our discussion is Drug Scenario in the Philippines. What are we waiting for? Let's get this discussion started. For us to be well directed, here are the most essential learning competencies. Describes the drug scenario in the Philippines. Discusses risk and productive factors in substance use and abuse. Analyzes situations for the use and non-use of psychoactive substances. Identifies the types of drugs or substances used and abuse. Corrects myths and misconceptions about substance use and abuse. Recognizes warning signs of substance use and abuse. Discusses the harmful short and long-term effects of substance use and abuse on the individual, family, school, and community. Explains the health, sociocultural, psychological, legal, and economic dimensions of substance use and abuse. And discusses strategies in the prevention and control of substance use and abuse. Now let's dig in the drug scenario in the Philippines. Drug abuse in the country is a serious problem because it is not just the lives of those who become hooked, but also the lives of those in the family and the community that are destroyed. According to the Armed Forces of the Philippines, Narcotics Command, ages 15 to 29 years are commonly hooked to drugs. Substance use and abuse is a growing problem in the Philippines. According to the International Narcotics Control Board, or INCB, an international board monitoring agency, the Philippines is listed as one of the countries in Southeast Asia where drug trafficking is growing in numbers. In the Philippines, drug use and abuse is a social health and concern. Poverty has become an increasing cause for involvement in the legal drug trade. Foreign drug syndicates take advantage and exploit the poor and use promises of easy money to entice the people to serve as couriers and runners. According to the 2012 statistics available in the Dangerous Drugs Board website, the most common type of substance of abuse among Filipinos are methamphetamine hydrochloride, or also known as shabu, cannabis sativa, or also known as marijuana, and inhalants, or contact cement adhesive. To understand more about these ideas, here are the common concepts in drug education. Drugs are any substances or chemicals which, when taken into the body, either through nasal, oral, transdermal, or intravenous way, have psychological, emotional, and behavioral effects on a person. Drugs of abuse are drugs commonly abused by users. In the Philippines, the three drugs commonly abused are shabu, marijuana, and inhalants. Drug dependence. It is a cluster of psychological, behavioral, and cognitive phenomena of variable intensity in which the use of a drug takes on high priority, thereby creating a strong desire to take the substance. Drug misuse. It is the use of substance for non-medicinal purposes. And drug tolerance is the condition of the body to adapt to the effects of substances, thus requiring an even larger amount of the substance. And here are the risk factors and protective factors of using drugs. Risk factors are those that contribute to drug abuse. Risk factors are those that make drug use more likely. Protective factors prevent drug use. Prevention programs are often being designed to enhance protective factors. Protective factors are those associated with reduced potential for drug use. Research has shown that many of the same factors apply to other behaviors such as youth violence, delinquency, school dropout, risky sexual behaviors, and teen pregnancy. The use, misuse, and abuse of drugs are the result of various factors surrounding a person. These factors either increase or decrease the possibility of a person to use drugs. Protective factors decrease the chances of using, misusing, and abusing drugs. These factors are composed of influences in different domains of life. Let's talk about drugs of abuse. Drug abuse is the non-permissive consumption of certain substance that may lead to physical or psychological dependence. Commonly abused drugs are marijuana, cocaine, heroin, alcohol, prescription drugs, and inhalants and solvents. There are different classifications of drugs of abuse. The Dangerous Drugs Board listed 3 major drugs of abuse in the Philippines. These are methamphetamine, hydrochloric or shabu, cannabis sativa or marijuana, and inhalants better known as solvents. There are 6 classifications of drugs. First one is gateway drugs. Gateway drugs such as cigarettes and alcohol are legal drugs that a non-drug user might try, which can lead him or her to more dangerous drugs such as marijuana and shabu. Teenagers who engage in early smoking and early drinking have a higher chance of using and experimenting with dangerous drugs of abuse. Number 2 is depressant drugs. Depressant drugs slow down the central nervous system and relax muscles and nerves. The central nervous system includes the brain, spinal cord, and nerves. Third one is stimulant drugs. Stimulant drugs speed up a person's central nervous system. It has an opposite effects of depressants. It makes a person's energy high. Negative effects of stimulants include depression and tiredness. The fourth one is narcotics. Narcotics are drugs which relieve pain and induce sleepiness. In medicine, these drugs are administered in moderation to patients with mental disorders and those with severe pain like cancer. It includes cocaine, heroin, and marijuana. Fifth one is hallucinogens. Hallucinogens are drugs which distorts reality and facts. It affects all senses and makes a user see, hear, and feel things that do not really exist in the time being. The name hallucinogen came from the word hallucination, which is to perceive illusions. It includes lysergic acid, bethylamide, psilocybin obtained from mushrooms, and mescaline. The last one is inhalants. Inhalants are found in ordinary household chemical products and anesthetics. It is readily available and accessible to young children. Example of household products used as inhalants are acetone, rag B or solvent, ordinary and spray paint, cleaning fluids, and air conditioner fluid or freon. Here are myths, misconceptions, signs, and symptoms of drug abuse. Recreational drug use is the use of psychoactive drug to induce an altered state of consciousness for pleasure by modifying the perceptions, feelings, and emotions of the user. When a drug enters the user's body, it induces intoxicating effect. Drug abuse is when you use legal or illegal substances in ways you shouldn't. You might take more than the regular dose of pills or use someone else's prescription. You may abuse drugs to feel good, ease stress, or avoid reality. Continuous and prolonged drug use has a very bad effect in a person. It can alter his behavior and his mental, physical, and psychological condition. Most importantly, drug dependence results in drug abuse, drug tolerance, problems with society and law, withdrawal symptoms, severe health problems, poor of quality of life, and eventually death. People give several reasons for taking drugs. Some believe that these drugs can make them feel good and look good. Certain drugs of abuse produce pleasure or euphoria. Euphoria is the high sensation brought about by the chemical reactions of the neurotransmitters in the brain. Thus, drugs affect your brain process. Let us analyze the different myths, misconceptions about substance use and abuse. Let us learn to prescribe the signs and symptoms of drug use and abuse among Filipino teenagers. Myth and misconception about drugs abuse improve memory. Facts about drugs of abuse do not improve memory. Misconception: drugs of abuse help in the digestion of food. Fact: drugs of abuse do not help in the digestion of food. Misconception: drugs of abuse makes a person bold and brave. Fact: drugs of abuse worsen life's problems and worries. Misconception: drugs of abuse heat up the body. Fact: drugs of abuse do not heat up. Instead, they make the body lose heat faster than normal. Now let's dig deeper. What do you think is the profile of a drug abuser? The Dangerous Drugs Board listed the following signs and symptoms of drug abuse. Below are some of the signs and symptoms of drug use. Declining interest in studies and work. Identification with known drug users. Negative outlook in life. Uncontrolled irritation. Reddish eyes. Foul body smell. Convulsions. Brown stains on fingers, sudden loss in weight, and frequent complaints of headache and stomach pains. Also, loss of concentration, lousy physical appearance, frequent involvement in petty fights and crimes, wearing of sunglasses even at night, paranoia or fear that people always stalk and talk about him or her, severe feeling of depression and loneliness. Complaints of overfatigue, psychological or physiological. Frequent changes of mood and extreme mood swings. Loss of interest in sports and hobbies, and poor judgment and loss of inhibition. Here are the short-term and long-term effects of substance use and abuse. Short-term effects last for a couple of days, hours, or even shorter periods. Long-term effects can be felt for weeks, monthly, and even for a lifetime. And here are the short-term and long-term effects of specific substances. First, gateway drug, alcohol. Short-term effects, headache and lightheadedness, slurred speech, slow body reflex, senses and coordination, overconfident, mood swings, nausea, loss of consciousness. Long-term effects, damage of organs like liver, heart, colon, and brain, cancer, cardiovascular diseases, cirrhosis of the liver, poor study and work performance, and alcohol poisoning. Now let's proceed to the short and long-term effects of another gateway drug, which is tobacco. For short-term effects, stress, rapid heart rate or pulse rate, persistent cough, difficulty in breathing, halitosis, sinusitis, stomach problems, weak physical performance. And for long-term effects, development of asthma, atherosclerosis, thrombosis, cardiovascular diseases, cancer of the mouth, throat, skin, lungs, and other body parts, hypertension, and heart attack. Now let's proceed to the short-term and long-term effects of depressants, which are also known as downers, suppress or slow down the central nervous system. Some types of depressants are tranquilizers, barbiturates, and hypnotics. Here are the short-term effects of depressants. Slow brain functions, which leads to temporary memory loss, slow pulse rate and heart rate, below normal breathing pattern, low blood pressure, inability to concentrate and poor judgment, confusion and irritability, dizziness and lightheadedness, slurred speech, and depression. And for long-term effects, aggressive behaviors, cardiovascular diseases, brain stroke, chronic liver disease, diabetes, cancer of the colon, and coma to death. Also, here are the short-term and long-term effects of stimulants, which are also known as uppers or speeders. They stimulate or activate the central nervous system. Caffeine is a stimulant which is found in soft drinks, energy drinks, coffee, tea, and chocolate. Illicit stimulants include cocaine and shabu. Here are the short-term effects. Increased heart rate or pulse rate, increased respiration, increased digestive process, increased blood pressure, increased body temperature, alert body responses, inability to sleep, euphoria, and depression. And here are the long-term effects: paranoia, heart attack, brain stroke, brain damage, kidney damage, liver damage, and coma, which leads to death. Short-term and long-term effects of narcotics, which are known as painkillers. They also induce sleepiness. Narcotics are administered to patients with mental problems. They are also given to cancer patients to relieve severe pain. Narcotic drugs include cocaine, heroin, and marijuana. Here are the short-term effects: drowsiness, euphoria, loss of appetite, vomiting, nausea, muscle cramps and pain, chills and shaking, weight loss, difficulty in sleeping or breathing, inflammation of the veins, and panic attacks. For the long-term effects, development of diseases like hepatitis, tetanus, and HIV/AIDS due to needle sharing, overdose leading to coma and death. Also, short-term effects and long-term effects of hallucinogens, which create hallucinations. Hallucinations distort what is real. Everything the person sees, hears, and feels are the opposite of reality. Lysergic acid, dithalamide or LSD, psilocybin, and mescaline are some of the common hallucinogens. Here are the short-term effects: euphoria, hallucinations, inability to sleep, nausea, aggressive behavior, memory loss, slurred speech, feeling of strength, loss of appetite, poor judgment of time and distance. Long-term effects are flashback, effects of the drug comes back after a long time of not using it, increased blood pressure, brain damage, psychosis, and coma and death. And lastly, short-term and long-term effects of inhalants are found in common household chemical products. Inhalants are huffed or sniffed. These effects of inhalants are similar to the effects of alcohol intoxication. Short-term effects: slurred speech, poor coordination, euphoria, dizziness and nausea, feeling of lightheadedness, foul breath, hallucinations, and delusions. For long-term effects: loss of hearing, uncontrolled muscle spasms, brain damage, nerve damage, and bone marrow damage. Here are other effects of drug use. Aside from oneself, drug use and abuse also affect the immediate family, school, and community where the drug user lives. Below are some of the effects of drug use on the family, school, and community. Letter A. Effects of drug use and abuse on the family. Broken and unhappy family ties. Ignored duties and responsibilities. Financial constraints due to drug dependence and addiction. High cost of drug treatment and rehabilitation. Family dishonor and embarrassment. And lastly, separation of family members. Letter B. Effects of drug use and abuse in the school. Poor academic performance, increased rate of absenteeism and tardiness, increased incidence of alcohol fights, low academic achievement rate, and incident of disrespect to school authorities. Letter C. Effects of drug use and abuse in the community. High incidence of crimes which includes stealing, robbery, and snatching. High incidence of accidents, examples are road accident, falling, and etc. Affected economy due to low manpower production. Loss of government funds due to drug and related operations, treatment, and rehabilitation. Now, to solve this problem, here are the prevention and control of substance use and abuse. There are various health ways to get rid of drugs. These range from simple immersion to hobbies like interactive and board games, sports, and joining clubs of interest. Decision-making skills. The following activities will strengthen your decision-making skills. Step number 1. Describe the situation you are in. Step number 2. List possible actions for the situation. Step number 3. Share your list with responsible adults. Step number 4. Carefully evaluate all possible actions. Step number 5. Choose which action is most responsible and suitable. And step number 6. Act responsibly and intelligently. For resistance skills, use the following steps to practice resistance skills in saying no to drugs. Step number 1. What is the problem? Step number 2. What could happen? And step number 3. What are the ways of saying no? And lastly, these are the steps on drug abuse treatment and rehabilitation. Drug abuse treatment and rehabilitation follow certain steps and procedures. Treatment and rehabilitation can be voluntary through representations, and compulsory confinement. Voluntary means the drug dependent decides on his or her own to be examined and admitted in rehabilitation centers. Voluntary through representation means the drug dependent is willing but wants to be represented by an immediate family member or legal guardian. And third one is compulsory confinement, means the drug dependent needs to be confined as the condition of life-threatening or threatens life of the family. And that's all for today. For your performance task, you do acrostic poem. Make an acrostic poem about breaking the myths and misconception about drugs. Use the letters of the phrase, "Say no to drugs," as the first letter of each line or sentence. And that's all for today again, grade 9 learners, and I hope that you enjoyed watching and listening. If you are new to my channel, don't forget to subscribe and hit notification bell for you to be updated of new uploaded videos. This has been Sir Les saying, let's dream and make it happen. Goodbye, grade 9 learners. See you all on my next video.